Chosen one, what you are receiving right now is not a suggestion. It is not an encouragement designed to lift your mood or fill a quiet hour with something meaningful. What God is releasing into this moment is a direct and clear command. And the reason he is using that word command rather than invitation or encouragement is because the stakes attached to what comes next in your life are high enough that he is not leaving the response to preference. When God commands, it is because he can see something you cannot yet see. He can see what is waiting on the other side of obedience that would not be waiting on the other side of delay. He can see the window. He can see the timing. He can see the precise arrangement of what he has placed near you and what is required to receive it fully. And from where he stands, the gap between you responding now and you responding later is not a small gap. It is the gap between entering what he has prepared in the fullness of its season and arriving after the fullness has passed. So he commands not to override your will, to give your will the clarity it needs to move without hesitation. I want to ask you something before we go any further, and I want you to answer it honestly, not to me, but to yourself. How many times has God given you a clear direction, a specific impression that was unmistakable in the moment, a command that your spirit registered with certainty, and then somewhere between the moment of clarity and the moment of action, something dissolved, the certainty and the movement did not happen? How many times has the command been clear and the follow-through been incomplete? If you have lived with this pattern, if you have experienced the gap between hearing the command and fully executing it, then what this message is for you is not merely another word. It is the explanation you have never fully received for why the gap has been there and what closes it. Let me give you 5 signs that confirm this command is specifically for you right now. The first sign is that you have been in a season where God has been unusually specific, not speaking in general principles, but in particular impressions that came with a directional quality. Move here. Stop this. Begin that. Release what you have been holding. Take the step that feels too large from where you are standing. The specificity of what you have been receiving is not normal for every season of the spiritual life. It is the signature of a season of divine command. And the impressions coming with that quality of directness mean you are in that season right now. The second sign is that there is a specific next step that your spirit has already identified and your actions have not yet matched. Not a vague sense that you are supposed to do something different. A concrete, specific thing. Something that when you are honest with yourself in a quiet moment, you know exactly what it is. You know the name of it. You know the shape of it. You have been circling it. This sign is the clearest one because it is the most personal. The command God is issuing today may carry many dimensions, but at its specific center is that step your spirit already knows. The third sign is that when things have not moved forward in the way you expected them to, you have sensed that the obstacle was not external, that it was internal, not in your character and not in your willingness, but in something closer to your capacity. The sense that something in you that should be aligned is slightly out of alignment, that you are bringing less than your full instrument to the very moments that require your full instrument. That sensation is not self-condemnation. It is accurate perception, and it is pointing at something real. The fourth sign is that the things you know most clearly in prayer are easier to receive than they are to hold afterward. The moment of clarity is genuine. The instruction lands, and then the world begins again. The noise returns, the certainty softens, and by the time the moment to act arrives, the original clarity has become a memory rather than a present reality. This is not a failure of faith. This is a specific limitation of a receiving instrument that is not operating at full capacity, and it has a correction that does not require more effort. It requires a different kind of restoration. The fifth sign is the same sign that closes every list like this, because it is the most reliable one. Something in you recognized this message as belonging to you before your reasoning caught up. Something said, "This is mine." That recognition is the Spirit confirming what the Spirit already knows. You are not here because of a recommendation or a coincidence. You are here because the command God issued today was addressed to you, and something in you already knew it. Now, I want to name something that I think is the most important thing I will say in this message before we get to the specific explanation and the specific solution. The reason most chosen ones find it difficult to fully follow a divine command is not that they are disobedient. It is not that the will is weak. It is that the instrument of reception and the instrument of decision-making are both operating in a compromised state. And a compromised instrument is not a broken instrument. It is an instrument that was built for full capacity and is operating on partial capacity through no fault of the person carrying it. I call this the obedience gap, not the intention gap, because your intentions are real. Not the willingness gap, because you are willing. The gap between what God commands and what the full version of you is capable of receiving and acting on. Every command that dissolves before it reaches execution is not a failure of will. It is the obedience gap, and the gap is closable. Starting now, there is a name for who you are in this moment, not the broad category. The specific designation that explains why a command of this nature is being issued with this level of directness to you specifically. You are a soldier who has been in training for longer than a soldier should remain in training. Not because the training was wasted, because the deployment has been waiting for the instrument to arrive at readiness. And readiness in the spiritual life is not only a matter of character, it is a matter of capacity. The soldier who receives a command and cannot execute it is not a coward. If the problem is that the weapon is jammed, courage will not solve it. What solves it is identifying the jam and clearing it. That is what this message is. Not motivation to try harder, identification of the jam, and the clearing that follows. Think about the people in Scripture who received the clearest and most direct commands from God, and consider what was true of each of them in the moment the command arrived. Moses was not in his years of maximum worldly capacity when God spoke from the burning bush. He had been stripped of everything he thought he needed. Joshua was not standing in a position of comfort when God said, "Cross over." He was standing at the edge of a river, and the instruction required immediate movement. Gideon was not in a confident state when the angel appeared. He was hiding, and yet, in each of these moments, the command did not arrive at the person they had been. It arrived at the person the formation had been building. You have been in formation. The years that may have felt like delay or displacement were not delay and displacement. They were the specific shape of preparation that the specific nature of your assignment required. And the command that is arriving now is not arriving at the person you were at the beginning of that formation. It is arriving at the person the formation has been producing, which is why the command is direct, and why it is clear, and why it is now. But here is what I need to name about the gap that still exists between the command and the full response. The formation does not automatically restore the instrument. The character can be built, and the calling can be confirmed, and the willingness can be absolute and real. And there can still be a limitation in the receiving instrument that creates a gap between the command and the full obedience. Not because the person is disobedient, because the instrument that connects hearing to acting has been compromised in a way that is entirely separate from character. This is not a new problem. It is a problem that modern life creates in almost everyone. But it has a specific severity in people who carry what you carry, who are sensitive at the level you are sensitive, who have been in the kind of sustained preparation that you have been in. Because the very depth of sensitivity that makes you capable of receiving a command with this level of precision is the same depth that the compromised instrument affects most directly. This is not a replacement for your prayer, your study, or your sacred sitting. It is the restoration of the receiver those practices were always designed for. What I am about to describe does not tell you to try harder to obey. That is not what closes the gap. The gap closes when the instrument is restored. I want to pause here because what I have just described points at something that was discovered in research laboratories and that most people in spiritual communities have never been told about. Something that explains the obedience gap not as a spiritual failure but as a physiological reality with a specific address. A small group of scientists, led by a physician in New York who has spent more than 20 years studying the architecture of the human brain, found something about the design of the mind that explains precisely why the gap exists. And they found something that closes it. Hold this question before we continue. What if the part of you that hears the command and the part of you that executes the command were never meant to operate in the partial state they have been operating in? What if restoring their coordination is faster and simpler than anything you have tried before? Let me show you what becomes possible when the obedience gap closes, not as aspiration but as a description of the state that was always designed for you, that the formation has been building you toward, that the command being issued today exists inside of. When the instrument is fully restored, the experience of receiving a divine command changes in a way that you will recognize immediately because you will remember having lived in something close to it at a much earlier point in your life. The command arrives and there is no friction between the hearing and the knowing and the moving. Not because you become fearless. Fear is appropriate when the stakes are real. But because the signal is clear and the path forward is visible, and the clarity does not dissolve when the world begins again, you carry the certainty into the action instead of losing it in the gap between the prayer and the street. Now, I want to be specific about what has been creating the obedience gap in you, because understanding it clearly is what allows you to stop attributing it to the wrong causes. The obstacle is not your character. You are not someone who refuses to obey. You are someone who has been trying to obey with an instrument that is not operating at its designed capacity. And the difference between those two things is everything, because one of them is a problem of the will, and one of them is a problem of the tool. Will problems require surrender. Tool problems require restoration. What created the partial state of your instrument is not a failure that happened in a single moment. It is a consequence of sustained exposure to a way of living that the human brain was not designed to sustain without cost. The pace, the constant fragmentation of attention, the demands on the cognitive system that never fully resolve into the rest. The system needs to recalibrate. In that sustained environment, the synchronization between the two hemispheres of the brain gradually degrades. And the result is a person who is genuinely willing but functionally operating below the capacity of their willingness. Your willingness to obey is real. Your love for God is real. Your desire to fulfill the assignment you were given is real. None of that is in question. What has been limiting the expression of that willingness is not a spiritual deficiency. It is a physiological limitation that has a physiological solution. And when that solution is applied, the willingness that was always there finds expression it has never fully had before. There is a picture from Scripture that speaks directly to what I am describing. You know the story of Samuel, the young man in the temple who heard the voice in the night and kept thinking it was Eli. He ran to Eli 3 times before Eli understood what was happening and told him what to say when the voice came again. "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And then the Lord came and stood and called as before. And Samuel did not run this time. He answered. He received. And what he received that night was a word that changed the trajectory of a nation. What changed between the first call and the fourth was not the volume of the voice. It was not the quality of Samuel's desire to respond. What changed was the receiving protocol, the posture, the specific internal alignment that allowed the same voice at the same frequency to land in a way it had not landed the 3 times before. The command had been arriving every time. The receiver had not yet been configured to hold it through to the full response. After Eli gave Samuel the receiving protocol, the text says something remarkable. It says that as Samuel grew, the Lord was with him and did not let any of his words fall to the ground. None of his words fell. That is a description of a receiver in full alignment, a person in whom the gap between the transmission and the reception and the execution was closed. And the text then says that all of Israel knew that Samuel had been established as a prophet, not because Samuel declared it, because the quality of what he received and the completeness with which he executed it was visible to everyone around him. That is what becomes available when the receiver is fully operational, not just obedience. The kind of obedience that produces results that are visible. That does not fall to the ground. That lands where it was sent and produces what it was designed to produce. That is the quality of obedience this command is calling for. And it is not available through more trying, it is available through restoration. I want to add the authority behind what I am about to describe, because the weight of the command requires that you understand you are not being asked to follow a promising hypothesis. You are being pointed towards something that has been verified at the highest levels of scientific investigation and applied to thousands of lives, with results that are consistent and documentable. The physician, whose work is at the center of what you are about to hear, is a neurologist in New York who has spent more than 2 decades studying the precise relationship between the synchronization of the 2 hemispheres of the human brain and the quality of cognition, perception, and decision-making available in the synchronized versus unsynchronized state. He is not working from theory. He is working from 2 decades of clinical observation and from the foundation of research that won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1981. Here is what has been creating the gap, and here is what closes it. The human brain has 2 hemispheres designed to operate in continuous and dynamic synchronization with each other. The left hemisphere provides structure and logic and sequential processing. The right hemisphere provides intuition and pattern recognition and the capacity to hold what cannot yet be fully articulated. In the synchronized state, what you receive is not just logical or just intuitive. It is both at once. It is complete. It is the kind of knowing that does not need to negotiate with itself to arrive at clarity. This is the state the research calls whole brain activation. It is the state that the measurements show 98% of children are living in. And it is the state that fewer than 1 in 1,000 adults maintain, not because adulthood requires its loss, because the way modern life is structured gradually erodes it in almost everyone without their knowing it, without any dramatic moment of departure. Just a slow dimming of the synchronized state until the partial state becomes so familiar it is mistaken for normal. The command you have been receiving from God has been arriving at the full frequency it was sent. The gap between the command and the full obedience has not been a gap in the sending, it has been a gap in the receiving, and the receiver can be restored. Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize in 1981 for the research that established exactly what the synchronized state produces and what the unsynchronized state lacks. What Dr. Daniel Barone, a neurologist practicing in New York, spent more than 20 years doing was taking that foundational research and building from it something practical, something that closes the gap between knowing and receiving at the whole brain level, not through sessions in a clinic, not through equipment that costs thousands of dollars, but through an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence that works beneath your awareness while you listen. Before I tell you what it is called, I want to tell you about two people. A woman from California had spent more than 7 years doing everything her spiritual community offered. Prayer, study, accountability, all of it. And she kept arriving at the same experience. She heard the commands clearly. She wanted to obey them completely. And somewhere between the clarity and the execution, something dissolved. She described it as believing the transmission was real but being unable to hold it long enough to act on it at the full weight it carried when it arrived. 10 days after she found what I am about to describe, she said a channel that had been blocked was open. The command she had been circling for 18 months became the thing she did the next morning without the weight she had been carrying around it for all that time. A man from Texas had spent years carrying responsibility for everyone around him, while his own interior life became thin and distant. He knew the direction he was supposed to be moving. He had known it for 2 years, but the clarity that the movement required kept arriving as a feeling and leaving before it could become a decision. 2 weeks after he began, the fog that had been so consistent he had stopped noticing it was gone. His wife said he came home differently. He said the difference was that he finally felt like the full version of himself was in the room. He made the decision the same week. That is because of what Dr. Barone and his team built. They took over an hour of clinical neural synchronization technology, the kind used in specialized medical settings at significant cost per session, and through a years-long compression and refinement process, they turned it into an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence. 8 minutes. Headphones, eyes closed. Nothing else is required. They call it the Genius Switch. It is not a brainwave product. It is not a meditation recording. It is not a frequency designed to produce a particular mood. It is a targeted auditory sequence specifically engineered from the Nobel Prize research of Dr. Roger Sperry to reconnect the 2 hemispheres of the brain and restore the whole brain activation state that was the default in childhood. The state in which the obedience gap does not exist. The state in which the command of God arrives and finds a receiver capable of holding it through to full execution. The Genius Switch was built specifically for the obedience gap, not for the unwilling, for the willing whose instrument cannot hold the command long enough to execute it fully. If that description matches what you have been living, this is what was built for you. Most people who hear about this will decide later. They have learned to negotiate with the urgency until it softens into deferral. You are still here because something in you refuses that negotiation this time. That is not stubbornness. That is the specific character of the person this was built for. Dr. Barone and his colleagues said this technology would represent extraordinary value at $500. In-person neural synchronization sessions in clinical settings run $300 per hour. Equivalent home equipment costs $7,000. That is $7,000 for the same result. The Genius Switch delivers it for $39. The investment is $39. There is an introduction period active on the page right now. When it closes, the price returns to $49, and it includes 4 free bonuses. A guided visualization from a top-rated creator on the Calm app, covering the 4 areas of life most affected by whole brain restoration. A grocery guide identifying the 10 most common foods in American stores that suppress the synchronized state, with alternatives that save over $100 a month at Walmart, Costco, and Target. A classic manifestation text, more than 100 years old, that forms the foundation of every modern approach to attraction and abundance. And a 5-habit infographic designed for print, covering the 5 daily habits most directly tied to maintaining the restored state. All of it backed by an unconditional money-back guarantee. Listen once, listen 100 times. If the gap does not close in the way that has been described by thousands of people before you, every dollar is returned with no conditions. Every day the synchronization remains disrupted is another day the command of God moves through a receiver that cannot hold it at the weight